Today I want to talk about spiritual signs. What are they, and how do you know if you've received one? First of all, not everything means the same thing to everybody, which might seem obvious, but it's really not, because there are hundreds or maybe thousands of books out there that are books of symbology. And every culture has their own meanings for different animals and different totems. What does this mean? What does that mean? What does it mean if you see this animal in the day? What does it mean if you see that animal at nighttime? What if you dream of it? And so you can't just say across the board that, let's say, an owl means this. In some cultures, an owl, if you see it, means death. But in some cultures, an owl means, the wise old owl. So what you have to do is you have to look at the animal or the sign that showed up, and you have to look at it in context to you, to your life, to what you're doing in the situation. What do I mean in context? Okay, so something happened to me, and this is how I actually named my first book, Hummingbirds Don't Fly in the Rain. What was happening is I was in my office, and I was looking at pictures of my daughter right after the plane crash after I got home, and I was hysterically crying because she had passed away. And it was storming outside, and it was thundering. And I looked out the window of my office, and there was a hummingbird flying outside my window. And what hummingbird is flying in the rain? And I thought, oh my God, Talia, that has to be you, because hummingbirds don't fly in the rain. And so I took that hummingbird as a sign that my daughter was with me, because I was looking at pictures of my daughter at that exact same moment. Now, to take that sign even further, I then got up and I just happened to go outside. And when I opened the door from my laundry room to the outside, that little hummingbird that was flying just a couple minutes earlier in the rain was dead on my porch step, perfectly centered. So that was definitely a sign. But besides that, it was out of context. Hummingbirds flying in a storm. And then when I spoke to my daughter in the spirit world and acknowledged that I thought that hummingbird represented her at that moment, and that hummingbird showed up dead on my porch, definitely out of context. So that I knew was a sign. Another example of out of context is when I was joking with my daughter, who used to leave me coins, mostly pennies and things all over the place. And I acknowledge them constantly, because the ticket to getting spiritual signs and communications is acknowledgement and thanking them. As I said, Talia, it'd be great if you left me larger coins. And so then I left the house, and when I came home, I found a dime in my planter. Now, the dime, out of context in the planter. So looking for things that are not normal. Now, in another podcast that I do, we were talking about signs and symbols, and I was telling her about something that happened to me when I went into a perfume store. And so rather than just reiterate that again here, I'm just going to play that part of her and I's previous interview. So here you go. It's going to jump right into the middle of an ongoing conversation. So I was in a perfume store trying on perfumes, and I was thinking to myself, oh, I love this perfume. Gardenia flowers are my favorite. Talia loves gardenias too. And this, no one will believe, but it's so true, and it just blew me away. I left the perfume store, and I got in my car, and on the floorboard of my driver's seat was a gardenia.
Wow.
So it was fresh, new, just picked. I don't know where it came from, other than the spirit put it there. It's like, wow. I took a picture of it. I kept it for as long as possible till it shriveled up and died. I was completely hysterically happy. It was the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me, really. I mean, from talking to Talia, smelling gardenia perfume, saying, I know you love gardenia. There's a freaking gardenia in my car. Weird. Yeah. And, someone would say, oh, well, you must have brushed against a gardenia plant and it stuck to your foot. And, well, that's all fine and dandy, but it's not possible because I wasn't near a gardenia plant. Plus, if it was on my foot, it would have been squished. So there's so many things that you can use your mind to try to justify, but really, it was a miracle.
Wow, that's amazing.
That was amazing. So I think that whole gardenia incident is one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me. And speaking of out of context, that was way out of context. So hopefully at this point you're realizing what out of context is. Basically, to put it in simple words, is this normal for that situation? Is what I'm seeing supposed to be here? Is it a regularity that this flower's here? Are these birds always here? Is this butterfly normal when it's here? That kind of thing. If it's abnormal, it's out of context. If it's normal, it's in context. So there's different ways to think about signs and symbols. There's requested signs and there's unrequested signs. Most of the time, people request signs. They want to know if they should stay in this relationship. They want to know if they should quit their job. They want to know if they should go on this trip. So asking for a sign is a way to get an answer from the universe. So asking is one thing, but receiving and understanding the sign is another. Because requested signs, you need to be aware of when they're coming in and what they mean. And sometimes you don't request signs. Sometimes signs just come in because they're warnings from the universe. The universe is trying to get a message to you for whatever reason. Now, I've had a lot of those sort of unrequested signs, and I listen to them. And it's really important that you listen to them too. But the ticket is learning how to interpret them and knowing that they're even coming in the first place. So one of the most extreme examples of an unrequested sign that I've received happened to me when I was going to go on a trip. Now, I was at the airport. I was already checked in. In fact, it was almost boarding time. And all of a sudden, I just got a heavy chest. It was like I couldn't breathe. And my heart started to palpitate. I thought I was having a heart attack, really. And so I thought, what is going on? So I just had to quiet myself. And I said to myself, I'm going on this trip. And it got worse. So then I quieted myself again. And I said, I am not going on this trip. And all of a sudden, everything just stopped. My breathing normalized. My heart palpitation stopped. And I became completely relaxed. And I knew that my body was telling me that I was getting a message from the universe not to go on this trip. So I listened because that was a huge, huge sign from the universe not to go on that trip. So I just didn't go. I canceled and I went home. Now, a lot of people would say, well, what was the reason? Did anything happen to the flight? No, nothing happened to the flight, but I don't know what the reason was, and that doesn't matter. The reason why never matters. The universe is going to give you messages, and they're going to come through signs, and that reason is irrelevant. It just matters that you listen to the sign. Now, that was a really big, extreme sign. Now, other signs can be much smaller, like my little hummingbird, which was a small sign with a big meaning. And that little hummingbird meant everything to me, but it was just a little small sign. But the size of the sign doesn't matter. It's the meaning behind the sign. And my instance at the airport was a huge sign. And the meaning, I don't know what, was behind it. And that doesn't matter. It just got my attention and I didn't go on my trip, and that's all that matters. Another kind of sign is the requested sign. Now, a lot of people request signs to give them information about should they do this or should they do that. The problem with requested signs is then you're looking for them. Everything becomes a sign. So let's just say you want to know, should I stay in this relationship? Then for the next 3 days, you're looking for a sign. So every butterfly that comes by, oh, was that a sign? Every rock that looks like a heart that you walk by, that's a sign to you. Okay, every bird that flies by, is that a sign? That becomes a problem. So you have to learn how to decipher what is an actual sign versus what is a sign that you're hoping is a sign. And then you need to not put your own desires that come from your own ego and your head onto the sign, because you'll interpret the sign the way you want to, not the way the universe is giving you the message. Requested signs, you have to be very careful. And honestly, when you're asking for a requested sign for something like a relationship or a job, if you go deep inside your soul and your heart, you'll know the answer without a sign. Because the fact that you're asking for a sign, you already know what you want to do. You're just looking for reinforcement. So saying, should I leave this relationship, and you're looking for a sign, you already know what you need to do. At that point, you're using your ego and your mind rather than your soul and your heart and your feelings. So another way to look at signs is as a confirmation that you're in the right place, or a person you're talking to is someone you should talk to. And I have an example about this, which is really kind of crazy. So years ago, I went to a woman who is really in touch with her abilities to talk to the universe and the spirits and things like that. And I wanted to see if Talia would come through and talk to her, because I'm always questioning and doubting whether what I'm hearing is true. So I like to always go to a third party to talk to my daughter, as well as listening to myself. It's just natural to doubt yourself. And her name was Julie, and she's amazing. Julie was telling me some things that Talia was saying, and then out of the blue, Julie started to laugh, and she said, "Oh my God, this is so funny, but I've never heard something like this before." And she said, "So I hope that it's okay to tell you this," but she said, "Talia wants me to tell you that Jesus rocks." And so I started to laugh. And this is not to, step on anyone's religious toes or anything like this, but the reason that Talia told Julie this is because Talia knows that I would know that it was really her talking to me, because one, I was raised Jewish, and so Jesus isn't on the forefront of who we talk about. And Talia had mentioned to me a few things about Jesus previously. And so for Talia to talk to Julie and to say, "Tell my mom Jesus rocks," she knew that I knew that it was legitimately Talia and that Julie was talking to her. And so that's another example of both out of context, because Julie talking to Talia and her saying that Talia said Jesus rocks, that's an out of context thing, but it's also totally in context for Talia, because it's a sign from Talia. It's like a little code word that Talia uses to let me know that this is a legitimate person. And it was just hysterical. So from that point on, I knew Julie was real, and my instincts knew that she was real. But for Talia to do that, it just confirmed it even more. And it was really great. And one last sort of example in that same vein. I was having breakfast about a week ago with a woman that I know, and the subject of signs and symbols came up, which is so strange. And somehow I said, an example would be is if you were driving and you saw a dead bird on the road, and then a couple minutes later you saw another dead bird, and then you saw another dead bird. And she said, "What made you think of the dead birds?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. It just came to my mind." She said, "Because on the way over here, I hit a bird." And I thought, okay. I said, "Well, it's not the dead birds then that matters. It's me bringing up dead birds and you hitting the dead bird. It's just basically proof that we're supposed to be having breakfast together and that you can trust what I'm telling you. It's a sign to you that what I'm saying you can believe in." She was pretty blown away. And I think to this day, she still can't get over the fact that she ran over the bird and I brought up 3 dead birds in the conversation. But that's just how it goes. Signs, symbols, things like that, they happen. And when they do happen, you need to acknowledge them and say thank you, because they don't always happen. And the more you acknowledge and the more you give thanks, the more they will show up. So that's it for signs and symbols for now. If you have any questions or comments, please send me an email at my website's contact page. That's www.kimberlyklein.com, or you can email me at kim@kimberlyklein.com. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.